Hey, listener, ready for a good scare?
Always up for a little spooky fun. What do we have today?
Today we're diving into Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Ah, a classic.
It really is. And our source material is an excerpt narrated by Doug Johnson, published by Voice of America just this week.
Very cool. I'm ready to get spooked.
Me too. But we're not just going to retell the story, you know?
Yeah.
We're going to dig deeper into what makes this story tick. Why are we still so fascinated by it centuries after it was written?
Yeah, that's the interesting part, isn't it? What gives this story its staying power?
Right. So let's start with the setting. Irving creates this picture of Sleepy Hollow as this, hidden valley in the hills of New York, practically cut off from the world.
Like time has forgotten it.
Exactly. It's peaceful, quiet, almost drowsy,
Mm-hmm.
but there's this underlying sense of folklore and superstition that makes it all the more unsettling.
Yeah, it's that contrast that makes it work. You
Yeah.
know, the peaceful setting makes the scares hit even harder.
Totally. Irving sets this tranquil scene, and then bam, the Headless Horseman.
The way he describes the horseman's ride, too, the thundering hooves, the moonlight glinting off bone, it's like something out of a movie.
It really is. You can practically hear those hooves echoing in the night.
It's brilliant. He uses contrast to crank up the tension, and it works.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got this creepy setting, and then we have Ichabod Crane, our awkward schoolmaster. He's kind of a funny character, right?
Oh, yeah, he's definitely got that comical side. But he's also pretty clever, especially when he's trying to win Katrina Van Tassel's heart.
He tries to use his music and charm to outmaneuver Brom Bones.
Uh,
But let's be real, Ichabod has his flaws.
oh, yeah, for sure. He's superstitious, obsessed with ghost stories. And let's not forget his love of money.
Right, he's totally fixated on the Van Tassel farm. Maybe even more than Katrina herself.
It's his ambition, and that, combined with his fear of the supernatural, makes him the perfect target for the legend of the Headless Horseman.
He's basically a walking example of how fear can make us vulnerable to anything that goes bump in the night.
And then there's how Irving uses storytelling within the story itself. We have Doug Johnson, our narrator for this Voice of America piece, telling us the overall tale.
Right, but within that, we have those villagers gathered around the fire sharing their own ghost stories,
Oh.
especially the one about the Headless Horseman.
It's like a story within a story within a story.
Exactly. It adds this whole other layer to the narrative, and it just pulls you in deeper. You're not just hearing one spooky event. It's like you're immersed in this whole world of folklore passed down through generations.
It makes the supernatural feel more real, more believable.
And it also foreshadows what happens to Ichabod, right? All those ghost stories fuel his imagination and basically set the stage for his encounter with the horseman.
Exactly. So we have Ichabod all scared of the stories, and then we have Brom Bones, who kind of embodies them.
Brom is our local hero, strong, athletic, a bit of a prankster. He's like the classic folk hero character.
Yeah.
But I gotta wonder, is there more to him than meets the eye?
That's the question that hangs over the whole story, right? Irving doesn't give us a clear answer. We see Brom laughing when Ichabod disappears. But is it relief? Or is it something more sinister?
Did he maybe have something to do with Ichabod's disappearance?
It's that ambiguity that keeps us hooked. Even today, we're left wondering about Brom's motives, and it makes us think about the darker side of human nature.
And speaking of clues, let's not forget about that shattered pumpkin found next to Ichabod's hat.
Oh, yeah, that's a detail that makes you want to put on your detective hat. Was it just a coincidence? Or was it a weapon used to scare Ichabod? Maybe a final prank from Brom?
Okay, I gotta hear more about this. Let's break down this whole mystery of Brom Bones and that pumpkin. What do you think? Did he have a hand in Ichabod's vanishing?
Well, you know, Irving leaves us hanging. He doesn't give us a straight answer, and that's part of what makes the story so good.
Yeah, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But that shattered pumpkin, it just seems too perfect to be a coincidence.
Right. It's like a little hint about Brom's character. You know how folklore often has these heroes who are also a little bit mischievous? Maybe even dangerous?
Okay, yeah, I see that. So you're saying Brom might be more than just a simple country boy.
Maybe. And that's what makes the legend of Sleepy Hollow so interesting even all these years later. It's not just about ghosts and scares, it's also about us humans. Our desires, our fears, and the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of it all.
I like that. It's like the story is holding up a mirror to human nature.
Exactly. And, you know, thinking about it, Irving wrote this story in the early 1800s, right? when America was still a pretty young country.
Yeah, and trying to figure itself out.
Exactly. It was a time of huge changes and a lot of uncertainty.
Mm.
And the Hudson Valley, where Sleepy Hollow is set, it was full of these old Dutch folk tales and ghost stories.
So these stories were like echoes of an older time.
Right. And Irving, he took those stories and wove them into this narrative that captured the anxieties of a young nation trying to grapple with its past, present, and future.
So Sleepy Hollow, it's not just a ghost story. It's like a reflection of America finding its identity.
That's a great way to put it. And the Headless Horseman himself, he comes from war and loss, right? He
Oh, yeah.
becomes a symbol of that unease, those fears that were hanging over America at the time.
Makes sense. And Ichabod, with his love of stories and his terror of the unknown, he embodies those anxieties.
He's like the intellectual,
Yeah.
the outsider drawn to folklore, but also terrified by it.
And then you have Brahm, connected to the land, representing that traditional masculinity. It's like they're two sides of the same coin.
I like that. Two sides of early America. But there's a darkness to Brahm, too, right? That wildness that suggests maybe unchecked power can be dangerous.
Wow. There's a lot going on beneath the surface of this story about a headless horseman chasing a scared schoolmaster.
That's the beauty of it. It works on so many levels. You have the supernatural, the historical, the psychological. It all comes together to create this really rich experience.
Okay, but there's one thing that's always bugged me. We never actually find out what happened to Ichabod Crane. Did the horseman get him? Did he just run away and never come back?
Nope. Irving leaves it completely open to us, and honestly, that's a big part of why the story is so powerful. It's that unresolved mystery, that sense of wonder and unease that stays with you.
It's like he gives us just enough to fire up our imagination, but not enough to satisfy our curiosity.
Exactly. And that's what folklore is all about, right? These stories are meant to be passed down, embellished, reinterpreted. They thrive on ambiguity, on the possibility that maybe there are things out there we just can't explain.
And the fact that people are still arguing about the ending centuries later proves how strong this story is.
Totally. It shows how good Irving was at his craft. He created a story that speaks to us across generations.
It makes me wonder, though, why are we so drawn to the unknown? Why do we love these stories about ghosts and the supernatural, even when they scare us?
It's a good question. I think it's because these stories connect to something deep inside us, a sense of wonder and fear that's been with us since forever.
Like our fear of the dark.
Yeah, exactly. Or the unknown. For centuries, humans have looked into the darkness and imagined all sorts of things lurking there.
And our imagination usually fills in those blanks with things that scare us.
True. But it's not just fear. There's also a sense of fascination, a desire to try and understand what's beyond our everyday experience.
So it's like a mix of fear and curiosity.
I think so. And the legend of Sleepy Hollow, it plays with both of those emotions really well. It shows us a world that's familiar but also unsettling, where the line between real and unreal gets blurry, and where the unknown is both scary and exciting.
That's why that open ending is so brilliant. Irving doesn't give us a neat answer, and that makes us face our own fears and fascinations.
It makes us ask ourselves, what do we believe? What are we willing to accept as possible?
It's like Irving is saying that the real scary thing isn't the headless horseman, but the uncertainty he represents. The idea that there might be things in the world we can't control or explain.
And that's a message that's still relevant today, especially in a world that often feels so uncertain and complicated.
Yeah. In a world where we have information overload, there's something kind of comforting about embracing the unknown, letting ourselves be drawn into a good mystery.
I agree. It reminds us that not everything needs to be explained. Some stories are better left open-ended, so our imaginations can run wild.
And that brings up another point. We've been talking a lot about the story, the history, the psychology, but we should also talk about how well written it is.
Oh, for sure. Irving was a master of language.
The way he describes Sleepy Hollow, the characters, even the horseman's ride, it's so vivid, you can practically see it all in your mind.
He was amazing at creating a sense of place. You feel like you're right there in the story.
Which is super important for a good ghost story.
Totally. It's not just about being scared. It's
Yeah.
about that feeling of being pulled into another world.
And Irving nails it. He uses sensory details, rich language, and perfect pacing to create a world that's both beautiful and creepy. A world that sticks with you long after you're done reading.
He paints with words.
Exactly. And that's why I think the legend of Sleepy Hollow keeps getting adapted and reimagined in so many different ways. Movies, TV shows, even theme park rides.
It shows how timeless the story is, how it captures our imagination and inspires new interpretations.
So we've covered a lot. We talked about the setting, the characters, the history, the psychology, even Irving's writing style.
Yeah, it's been a good deep dive.
But it all comes back to this The Legend of Sleepy Hollow is a story that defies easy explanation.
It's a story to be experienced, to be felt, to be thought about.
And now it's your turn, listener.
Mm,
We've explored so much, but what do you think? Why does this story still resonate with us after all this time? What is it about the Headless Horseman, about Sleepy Hollow itself that keeps drawing us in?
what does it tell us about our relationship with fear, with folklore, with the mysteries we choose to believe in? Maybe it's the thrill of the unknown, or the way it reflects our own anxieties. Whatever it is, I think it's worth digging a little deeper into this classic tale and finding your own meaning in it.
Yeah, it really is amazing how a story like this can stick with us for so long, even after centuries.
It shows how powerful a good story can be, right? Especially when it taps into these universal themes that we can all relate to.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
But it's not just Irving's words that make this story so alive. It's how people have reinterpreted it over time. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Think about all the different ways Sleepy Hollow has been adapted. Movies, TV shows, graphic novels. Each one takes Irving's basic story and gives it a new twist.
It's like the legend itself is changing with the times.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so fascinating to study. Sleepy Hollow keeps evolving.
Right.
It speaks to each new generation in a different way.
So we've talked about a lot of different things, the setting, the characters, the history, the psychology.
Even Irving's writing.
We really went deep.
We did. But I think the biggest takeaway is this. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow is a story that you can't easily explain.
It's not meant to be explained. It's meant to be experienced, to make you feel something, to make you think. And that brings us to our final thought for you, the listener. We've explored a lot today, but now it's your turn. Why do you think this story has resonated for so long? What is it about the Headless Horseman, about Sleepy Hollow, that captures our imaginations?
What does it say about us? About how we deal with fear, with folklore, with the mysteries we want to believe in? Maybe it's the excitement of the unknown, or maybe it's the way the story reflects our own anxieties. Whatever it is, I think it's worth taking another look at this classic tale and see what it means to you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. It's been a spooky good time.
And listener, if you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to check out our other episodes where we explore all sorts of fascinating topics and sources. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.